hello everyone, and thank you for joining me today for a conversation about childhood friendships, particularly in the elementary school years. So let's begin by having everyone introduce themselves. Dr. Kennedy-Moore, would you go first?
Sure. My name is Dr. Eileen Kennedy-Moore. I'm a clinical psychologist based in Princeton. I'm also a mom of four, and I've written a whole bunch of books about children's feelings and friendships, including Growing Friendships, A Kid's Guide to Making and Keeping Friends, and Kid Confidence, Help Your Child Make Friends, Build Resilience, and Develop Real Self-Esteem.
Thank you. Mrs. Krupa?
Hi, my name is Amy Krupa. I am a lower elementary teacher at Princeton Montessori School. I came to this school in 2004, so almost 17 years ago. I spent my first year here really having an experience at all levels as a floating substitute teacher. And it was in that time that I knew that lower elementary would become my home, and I have been here ever since. I am also a mother to three boys, ages 10, 11, and 14. So I'm kind of right in the thick of parenting myself.
Thank you, Amy. And Mrs. Manley?
Yes, hello. I am Bridget Manley. I am a teacher in the upper elementary program. Amy and I started here around the same time. I started in 2002. Kind of took a break for a couple of years as I had my own children. I'm also in the thick of parenting two elementary age children, second grade and fourth grade. And just like Amy, I also started as a permanent substitute here, and my heart really was towards the upper elementary age children in that whole developmental stage. So I've been there ever since as well.
Well, it's great to have so many people on the call who really understand childhood at the elementary years and beyond. So let's get started with our conversation. Friendship is such a relevant topic across all ages, but particularly in the elementary years when children are learning how to be a good friend and how to make friends. Dr. Kennedy-Moore, as the issues that arise around topics of friendship are so related to the stages of development of a child, would you begin with just giving us an overview of the different stages of social emotional development in childhood?
Sure. And that is really an important context to understand kids, because we think, oh my gosh, my kid is the only one who's doing this. And it's so helpful to know what is typical for the different ages. So I jotted down some notes about, this is from research by Robert Selman, who laid out the different stages of friendship. And he has kind of annoying academic names for his stages. So I'm going to give you my names too. So the first one that Selman calls level 1 friendship is one-way assistant. I call it the what's in it for me stage. So this is about 5 to 9 years. Now you're going to notice that when I go over these stages, the age ranges are huge. And it's because, people don't hit their 6-year birthday and then they've left everything behind. Children can go up and down. One day they're at stage 1, the next day they're at stage 0. So, but in this what's in it for me stage, kids have a very pragmatic view of friendship. And they think of friends as kids who do nice things for them. They don't think so much about what they contribute to the friendship. So children at this age care a lot about friendship, and they may put up with a not so nice friend just so that they can have a friend. They also tend to use friendship as a bargaining chip. And I bet our teachers can back me up on this, but we hear things like, I won't be your friend if, or you can't come to my birthday, or I'll be your friend if you do the other thing. So the next stage, Selman calls it the two-way fair weather cooperation phrase. I call it the by the rules stage. So this is about ages 7 to 12. And at this stage, kids can understand their friend's perspective, but they can't do it at the same time as their own. So they're kind of looking at one side or another. They understand turn taking, but they can't get an observer's perspective to look at patterns in relationship. This is the age where kids are very concerned about fairness, but in a very rigid quid pro quo way. So if they do something nice for a friend, they expect that the friend better do something nice for them at the next opportunity. And if that doesn't happen, the friendship could fall apart. Children at this age are also very judgmental about themselves and other people. So this is where we hear things like, no one's going to like me because of my stupid haircut. So they expect that everybody is judging them very harshly. So they can also be very jealous. And this is also the age where they are concerned about fitting in by being exactly the same as everybody else. Parents get kind of worried about that, thinking, oh my gosh, my kid is a follower. It's developmental. As they're moving and exploring outside the family, what's the safest way to explore that friendship world? Well, just be the same as everybody else, just blend in. It doesn't mean that they're going to be a follower for the rest of their lives. They're just figuring things out. This is the age where sometimes we'll see secret clubs. And the kids will spend a lot of time talking about, what happens in the club and what are the rules and who's in and who's not. And nothing actually ever happens in the clubs. Michelle, you told me the most hilarious example about that. Would you want to share that?
I'm trying to remember. Oh,
the one with the
my son.
t-shirts. The t-shirts.
Okay. So my son, when he was in first or second grade, started a band. And apparently only some of the boys in the class were in the band. And they had finally asked for a meeting at my house. And I thought all these instruments were going to come, and only one of the kids actually played an instrument. But that was their band, and they wanted t-shirts and everything. And it was quite the buzz, at school to talk about who was in the band. But to my knowledge, there was no music or song ever produced.
That's so cute. And these clubs really, your sons lasted a while, but usually they're pretty short-lived. The next stage, Salman calls the intimate, mutually sharing relationships. I call it the caring and sharing stage. This is about ages 8 to 15. And this is where we start to see friendships more like what we adults consider friendships. So the friends help each other solve problems, and they confide in each other about thoughts or feelings that they wouldn't share with anybody else. They know how to compromise. They can also do kind things for each other without keeping score. So it really is a generosity and a genuine caring about the other kid's happiness. For some kids, this is also the joined at the hip stage. So girls more often than boys will see but boys it happens too. So they'll be best friends, and they expect each other to do everything together. And they can also feel very betrayed if their best friend does something with another child. So
Well,
those are
that
the
is
main
very
stages that we'll
helpful.
see in the elementary years. Yeah.
Yes, and really those descriptions, and I love the phrases that you coined. Those descriptions are so helpful to put in context what we're going to share. And now we want to turn to our faculty members to get an inside look at, what's typical inside the classroom. How does all this play out, these developmental stages? So let's start with our lower elementary teacher, Mrs. Krupa. Mrs. Krupa, can you share, one typical area of conflict that occurs between the ages of 6 to 9 among the children that you help guide educationally and social emotionally?
Sure. Of course, we know that learning how to interact with people and have healthy relationships is such a huge part of the children's education. And in lower elementary, when the students are around 6 to 9 years old, they enter what Maria Montessori defines as the second plane of development. And it's really during this time when the children are transitioning from working and playing more independently to now seeking out social connections with their peers in the classroom. And they have this new, really strong drive for social connection. And that really leads into, a sensitive period for moral development. And they just start to grapple with the ideas of what's right, what's wrong, what's fair, what's unfair, as Eileen, you were saying before. And in lower elementary, it's really common for our students to engage in these social power struggles where they're trying to figure out who is right and who's in charge. And, we see this happening mostly during free play time or during recess time, particularly when they're trying to organize an activity together or participate in a game. So this is something that we see typically in lower elementary.
That makes sense. And I can see that play out, and I can see how all of you really work to build in time to get the children to do some forethought and also to process. So on that note, what do you do typically as faculty to help massage those situations where, let's say there's a power struggle, as you mentioned, or two different points of view and they can't see it at the same time, as Dr. Kennedy-Moore mentioned?
At our level, how that really looks is that we're taking the opportunity to bring the children together in the moment. And I think that in the moment is the key phrase there. And I'm so thankful that in our environment, we have enough adult presence that we can really stop at any point. And we can break out into a conversation with two students who might be having a conflict with each other, or a small group. And honestly, sometimes we just have to stop and have a whole class meeting. And it's in this time where we're really helping the children be able to identify the frustrations that they're having. And we're really there to support them as they're listening to each other, expressing their feelings. And as the teachers, we're just navigating the conversation and helping the children come to a place where there's some sort of resolution or compromise, where the children feel a little bit better at the end. And of course, we are trying to give them as many opportunities as possible to begin the process of solving some of this really hard work independently. But at our level, the children are still very much reliant on our help and our reassurance in this process.
Well, as you're saying that, it made me think about yesterday when I was in your environment at lunchtime, and there was a boy and a girl sitting across from each other having lunch, and they came over to ask for my assistance. And I just found this so fascinating. They were in an argument and they wanted a sort of referee. And the girl said, he thinks I'm mean to him at the end of the day at dismissal when we're sitting and waiting for the cars. But I'm frustrated with him because he puts his stuff everywhere all over the bench and no one else can sit down on it because his things are all over. And he says, well, I don't have any more things than anyone else. And you sit down and you're just scowl at me and you're mean to me. And I helped do exactly what Amy had said, which is just to say, let's listen for a moment. What is she saying? What might you do that would make her feel more welcome to sit on the bench? And let's hear what his thoughts are. Is he having trouble with his materials? It is winter. We've got coats and hats and backpacks and sleds and all kinds of things. How can we, come to a better solution? I'd be curious, and I'll ask you later, Amy, how they did at dismissal later that day. But yes, that makes sense. And I think for parents of a 6 to 9 age child, it's helpful to remember what you had mentioned, which is help them to listen, help them to take turns speaking, and help them to come up with a solution they can both get behind. So Bridget, you work with upper elementary age children, which is typical 9 to 12. And we would love to hear a typical conflict for that level child, and also what, as teachers, you do to help them learn these skills, which are so important in life.
Yeah, as Amy is talking, in upper elementary, it's a lot of the same thing. It just appears a little bit different since the children are a little bit older. We work a lot on communication skills. They had a lot of practice. I always say that upper elementary teachers reap the benefits of the lower elementary teachers and their hard work. And communication skills and a growth mindset, what Dr. Eileen Kennedy-Moore was saying as well, kind of how they get kind of stuck in how this is how they feel like they're going to be, or they're going to be judged. That happens a lot. And empathy. We help with a lot of perspective taking and empathy, and working on communication skills. Sometimes at this developmental stage, they're experimenting, and we're helping them navigate with that experimenting. I always talk to my 5th grade students about how they're experimenting with humor, and sometimes they're going to miss the mark, and we'll be here to support them with that. Really being able to communicate with each other and modeling. We do a lot of modeling. And just like Amy said, we have the adult presence in our classroom. So in the moment is critical, that we can stop and we can talk. What we also see, kind of playing off of what Dr. Kennedy-Moore said, is that children at this age, they need a lot of repetition with this. And I think sometimes parents get frustrated with that because you talk to them once about it. And it really is, I mean, it's a blessing that we have the multi-age classrooms, because as a teacher, I get to see the students grow, and the children that they come in as third graders in my classroom, they leave so different. They are so ready for the next developmental stage, but we are planting seeds all the time. And it happens on the children's time. So when conflicts happen at recess, we really have to stop in the moment. And it might take, 5-10 minutes of the next class. And like we said, we have the teacher presence, but it's critical. We're not going to get onto the learning unless some of this stuff is kind of resolved and children feel safe. And having those 3 years or multi-age years with the children help to build that relationship. Maria Montessori was very big on the spiritual preparation of teachers as well as students, and looking at the whole child. And I really think that we have the time to do that. So,
well, I think what I hear from both the teachers is that, it is the work of education to not only teach math and reading and all the things we think we're coming to school for, but really to teach socialization.
absolutely.
And, when the groundbreaking work came out about emotional intelligence, I don't think any of the people working in education were surprised to hear that EQ is a bigger predictor of success and happiness than IQ.
Yeah.
Dr. Kennedy-Moore, parents, get upset when their children are unhappy, of course, and they don't like to see them struggle with friendships. But oftentimes, we try to do something that would help as an adult, and we are getting in the way of their learning to develop socially. Can you speak a little bit to what is the role of the parent in aiding the teacher's work on a daily basis?
Sure, but first I just have to say how excited it makes me to hear what Mrs. Manley and Mrs. Krupa were saying, because, oh, these lucky children. Oh my goodness, because that's exactly what they need to learn to develop socially. One of the things that's really important to understand is that we went through the different stages, but what is typical of all the stages, before, during, and after, the ones that we discussed, is conflict. So conflict is not a sign that something bad is happening. And what I heard very clearly from Mrs. Manley and Mrs. Krupa is that they understand that those conflict moments, those are learning opportunities. This is amazing. This is wonderful. And also that this is not something that the social emotional development takes time and it takes practice, and they're going to mess up. Good. We adults have not managed world peace or even perfect marriages. So, why would we think that a bunch of 8-year-olds are going to get along perfectly? They aren't. And that's okay. And with these wonderful teachers to guide them through those rough spots, what a fantastic opportunity.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because often I will get as head of school, but we didn't think this kind of thing would occur in a Montessori school.
Why not? They're children, they're human, so, and this is good. Not that we wish pain and suffering on children, but that's how they grow. That's how they learn.
We try to celebrate that with the children too. Sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We try to celebrate that with the children too. That we kind of say, congratulations, you worked well through this problem.
Oh, yes.
And when it happens again, we'll talk.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And it really is what fuels the development of children's friendships, from the toddler love the one you're with friendships to the more intimate and lasting friendships of teenagers, is an increasing ability to understand someone else's perspective.
Yeah.
So that's what your teachers are already doing, and that's really what parents can do. So when your kid comes home and they're upset about so-and-so was mean to me, which is how kids view it, then what we want to do is reach first for empathy, because they are suffering, they're hurting in that moment. And especially as a parent, it really helps to have a parent on your side in the sense of understanding your feelings. Oh, that must have really hurt your feelings, or you're really frustrated that she does that and that this keeps happening. But then we want to give them a glimpse as to how the other person might be feeling. I talk sometimes about the maybe game, so maybe they did that because they were deliberately trying to make you suffer, but probably not. What are some other reasons that say that boy might have had his bags all over the place? And see if the kid can come up with that, and try to imagine some non-mean reasons why somebody might have done that. So we want to discourage retaliation.
Yes.
A lot of times, just because they're kids, and they haven't yet managed to temper their own feelings, the temptation is like, well, they hurt me, so I'm going to hurt them back worse. That's not a good idea. It's not kind. So we can talk about, well, how do we move forward from this spot? Maybe it's about speaking up. And we can, as the teachers were talking about, give them the language, using I statements to ask for what they want. Putting in a please, why not? It makes it easier for the other person to hear it. Sometimes it's more about just forgiveness and recognizing, oh, maybe they were just having a bad day. And in Growing Friendships, we actually have a list of forgiveness guidelines. So if it happened once and it's never likely to happen again, if the person is genuinely sorry, if it happened more than a month ago, then let it go. Let it go. And that's part of being a good friend too, is being able to have that forgiveness. One thing, and I'm sure the teachers can add on with this, one thing that makes friendship difficulties more complicated is when the rest of the kids pile on and pick sides. I don't know if you want to address how you deal with that.
I think upper elementary, that tends to happen more than lower. Bridget, maybe you want to speak to when you've got a whole class movement going.
Yeah, one of the beautiful things about our environment is that we really set our older students up kind of as the leaders of the classroom. That's our 5th grade students. Our 4th grade students, I always tell them that they're the leaders in training, the LITs, and they love having that, that badge. But really, we have a classroom kind of system. We have class meetings that happen. So when there's a whole community, something that's affecting the whole community, we have a class that happens every Friday for 5th grade students that kind of teaches them how to help other students solve problems. So that when we are in a class meeting, our leaders can kind of talk through. We have a suggestion box, and we have different ways of guiding the students through that. Thankfully, I mean, it is a tendency for students to kind of choose sides and stuff, but thankfully we have that time to kind of tell students that this is something that these students are going to work through right now. If we need your help, we will come ask you as well, but I think they're okay. Students at this age are wonderful in the sense that they really do respect each other's privacy when they know that it's something that children are working on. We set up the environment that this is an area of successes and goals, and students have goals. So we kind of can rephrase that to the other students. This is a goal that your friend is working on right now, and we can respect that space. But the children know more and want to help so much at this stage. So having that community environment and establishing the environment for the students to set that up is critical.
And Amy, I know at the lower elementary.
I'm sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say for Amy, I know at the lower elementary level, they can get stuck on their point of view. And so I thought that might be a nice segue for her to talk about how they can get kids to come down to a listening mode. And then of course, we'd love to hear your response, Dr. Kennedy-Moore.
Yeah, I think that, for lower elementary, we don't necessarily have children picking sides. But what we do have is children choosing their friends kind of in the moment. And, one day they might have a great day with a friend. And then the next day that person wants to be with someone else. And how confusing is that for the lower elementary students? And what we see at our level is that really leads to some conflicts where the children are feeling excluded from friendship groups or from group activities based on the fact that, well, this person was just my friend, but now they want to be with someone else.
Yes.
Maybe Eileen, maybe you could speak to, the developmental characteristics that lead to those conflicts.
Sure. I mean, this really is just so important because children are black and white thinkers, and they want to know who's right and who's wrong. And we adults have to kind of shift beyond that. And I would say, especially for parents, we don't want to get caught into the who's the good kid and who's the bad kid. They're all learning. And I have a couple of thoughts about that I want to share. One is Michael Thompson once wrote in describing children's friendship, he said that the line to describe it is, "It all started when she kicked me back." I love that. I love that because it just shows, that I'm looking on, that the kids are looking only from their perspective and not really seeing the other without some adult help. So that's really important. And we also, we know that there was an interesting study that they had teachers designate certain kids who were especially aggressive and other kids who were especially non-aggressive. And then I don't know how they got permission for this, but they recorded the kids on the playgrounds and just kept notes on, every time anybody did anything mean. And the bar was pretty low. So saying now would count. And what they found is that these especially aggressive kids did something mean every 2 minutes. But the especially non-aggressive kids, they did something mean every 3 minutes. So, this is a learning thing. They are just learning to really understand someone else's perspective. And what I hear very beautifully from the teachers is that we're moving on the who's right and who's wrong, who's bad and who's good, to like, we're all in this together. We're going to acknowledge everybody's feelings and kind of move forward in a kind way.
And I think too, Dr. Kennedy-Moore, for the faculty who teach so many children in the same age group year after year, and they have a really good sense for what developmentally is happening, it can be easier than for a parent who it might be their only child or their oldest, and they've not experienced it before. And, all of us are parents on the call. So we've all been in that mama bear mode where our child comes home and says their version of a story, and we feel like they're wronged, and we want to let the teacher know that this other child wronged them and that they're an innocent victim. And we move into this vocabulary using the word bullying. So I wanted to also ask you to help us put that in perspective. There's so much in the news now about bullying, and we all go to that word immediately when there's any kind of conflict. And I wanted you to speak to just ordinary childhood meanness, as you mentioned in that experiment, versus true bullying, and how parents can protect themselves from overprotecting.
Yeah, so I definitely think that the B word is thrown around way too much. And you'll see things in the media about, zero tolerance. And the idea is, well, let's separate the bad kids from the good kids. And I am just, to my bones, opposed to that way of thinking. As a clinician, I have seen very serious cases of peer abuse. Most of what happens between kids is not that case. So let's talk a little bit about how researchers define bullying. So it's deliberate meanness, targeting a particular child. But here's the most important part of that, the definition. It involves a power struggle between the child getting targeted and the other kids or kid doing the targeting. That is really fundamental. And we have to be careful of calling the ordinary meanness bullying, because what you're saying to your child is, darling, you are too fragile and delicate to handle this thing. We really don't want that to happen. I'll tell you a story with my own kids. When my youngest was pretty little, I heard one of the older kids saying to her, "You're bad." And I was horrified because I would never say anything like that to a child, dismissing their whole worth as a human being. And I certainly had never said anything like that to the child who was saying it. But here's the interesting thing. The little one was not devastated by this comment. And in fact, she stuck her chin in the air and said, "I'm not bad." And when I heard that, I thought, this is a good thing because in the world, not everybody's going to be nice to our kids. And it would be really nice if, based on the conflicts that they'd had in lower elementary or with their siblings, that they know how to stick their chin in the air and say in a situationally and developmentally appropriate way, "I'm not bad." So,
and coaching children to be able to, use their language and to
Absolutely.
see another perspective. Sounds like those are the two big things I'm hearing. I wanted to wrap this up too by asking Amy and Bridget to think for a minute. This is really being done for parents, so they have some help in understanding these elementary years, typical conflict, what we do in a Montessori setting to help develop this important skill. Amy, if you could speak directly to parents who are about to go into this 6 to 9 phase with their child, what's the one thing you would ask of them in partnering with you as a teacher to help their child develop real tools and skills for social emotional connections?
Okay. Well, I think particularly in a Montessori school, forming a really solid relationship between the parent and the teacher is so important. And I think as parents,
Right?
we all need reminders sometimes that it's okay to let our children really experience these, challenging highs and lows of friendships, because in this process, it's developing their self-esteem, it's developing their sense of purpose, and we're really learning new life skills that these children are going to use throughout their lives. In lower elementary, some social conflicts that go unresolved in the moment at school usually come up during bedtime. We all know when we're laying in bed at night and the children are with their parents and their walls come down and they start expressing all of these big emotions that they're having. And what we always ask of parents, in these moments is, of course, to listen, to acknowledge that their feelings are valid and real. The children at this level really want to be heard. And also in doing that, encourage their children to come to the teacher, because we're here to support them and help them. And sometimes it's also helpful just to get a little email from home saying, these are some things that came up at bedtime, just wanted to let you know. Because it's helpful for us as teachers. We have the eyes in the classroom and the parents have the eyes and the ears at home. And when we work together in partnership to best support the children, we really see that we can maximize their growth in our environment. And I always tell parents when I'm meeting with them that are coming into our program, you might think of, first and second grade as you remember in terms of math or reading or writing. But I always promise parents that the most important work that they're going to do in lower elementary is their social and emotional learning. And we just ask that parents have that trust that we know how important this is to children at this age. And it's really something that's built into our entire curriculum in lower elementary.
Thank you, Amy. And I hear trust being a resounding theme, and also what Dr. Kennedy-Moore said about really expressing empathy first when your child is upset. That's absolutely appropriate and needed, and you're a safe haven for them. But then also not taking those feelings on yourself and thinking you own them and have to resolve them, but helping to coach them to get back in there. What can you say situational? What might the other person have thought or felt? And the other thing I really liked that Dr. Kennedy-Moore said is to think, why might that person have done that? And let's go through all the things and sort of make them see it would be ridiculous to think that they were singly doing that to make you miserable. Most likely there are some other reasons. Bridget, how about you? What would you say to the parent coming into upper elementary? What would most help you as faculty in having the parent as a partner through these friendship issues?
Yeah, I think Amy nailed it. I think knowing that we are here to help guide them through this developmental stage is critical. Like everyone has mentioned, we have seen this developmental stage. I have seen this age 9 to 12 for 18 plus years now. So knowing what is normal, that we're here to partner with you. Also, I always like to reiterate to the parents that they're doing a better job than they realize. I think parents sometimes sell themselves short, or anxiety kind of, takes over. And like Amy said, having that email from the parent, sometimes I really love when parents kind of use emails as an opportunity to say, I was thinking this, did I handle this correctly? This is what I saw at home. Were you seeing this here at school too? Having that kind of guide, and it's a conversation back and forth continually that we're here to support with. What I want parents to know is that we're here to help them as well. And even though I'm in the thick of it as well, and I turn to my coworkers because, like we've mentioned before, I have the mama bear instincts as well. We have the experience to kind of help you through this developmental stage.
Well, I want to close too by just letting parents know that we're very fortunate to have Dr. Eileen Kennedy-Moore as a resource for our faculty. And she really provides some formal training for us and help, but also informal conversations when we want to just get a second opinion and check about how we're managing things.
Yeah,
Dr. Kennedy-Moore, did you want to say anything?
Little comment?
Oh, yes, I was just going to say, do you want to say anything in closing?
I do, yeah. So one thing that we need to remember as parents is that children's friendships change quickly. So today, your son may come home and say he hates Stuart's guts. And tomorrow, he and Stuart's may be best friends. Or today your daughter is deeply wounded by whatever the friend did, and you're staying up late thinking, oh my gosh, she's really suffering. And then the next day you ask her about this terrible crisis, and she goes, oh, it's fine. So it's such a resource to be able to have the teachers to navigate through them. But keep in mind that according to research, negotiation and compromise doesn't become the primary way that children resolve conflicts until age 18. Usually what happens is the kids separate for a little bit and then come back together and be nice to each other. I had a little boy once in my practice, and he came in so sad. And he said, I lost my friend. We had an argument, and now I don't have my friend anymore. Mm. And I told him the secret, which is, here's what you do tomorrow. You go in and you just be friendly and kind to him. And he said, really? I go, yeah, that's all you do. Just go in, be friendly and kind, and we'll get past this moment. So the learning, the perspective taking is great. But, and I say this to my parents all the time, in family relationships, love means trying again. So that's what they need to do, is just try again and try to handle it better the next time.
Well, that is a great piece of advice to end on, because Dr. Montessori so believed that we can create a better world by helping to raise children who know how to resolve conflict. And in that way, we will have peace between countries, peace in marriages, as Dr. Kennedy-Moore alluded to, and peace in our relationships, and to not sever relationships right away. Allow children to heal, and don't put any child on the bad list as a parent. You'll never have them over to your house. You'll never, have your child be friends with them again, because they are experimenting and role playing and trying things out, and they have these great teachers to help guide the parents and the children. So I know having sound parenting advice at your fingertips is so helpful to parents. I want to thank all of you ladies for joining me today on this conversation about friendships in the elementary years. Thank you so much, and keep doing the good work you're doing.
Thank you.